My name is Keturah Williams, and I need you to listen to me very carefully because what I'm about to tell you will break your heart. There's a moment when the person you trust most becomes your worst enemy, when the children you die for disappear without a trace, when you discover that everything was orchestrated by someone who smiled in your face every single day. That's where my story begins. But before I tell you what happened, I need you to do one thing. Right now, tell me the time in your current location. Are you ready? Let's begin. I wasn't always Keturah Williams. When my story begins, I was Keturah Palmer. I had a husband, Marcus Palmer, who made me laugh every single morning. I had a small house. I had hope. I had dreams of holding my own baby in my arms. But I couldn't get pregnant. 5 years. 5 years of trying. 5 years of watching my hope die every single month. 5 years of Marcus's mother, Vanetta Palmer, making it her personal mission to destroy my soul. I can still hear her voice in my head. "You're not woman enough," she would say, standing in my kitchen like she owned it. My Marcus could have married someone fertile, someone who could actually give this family what it needs. Every word was a knife sliding between my ribs. Every visit was torture I couldn't escape. Then one day, Marcus came home with a proposal. His company was sending him on a work trip to the coast. 1 week, just the two of us, away from Vanetta's poison, away from the doctors and the negative tests, and the crushing weight of failure. "Let me remind you that I love you for you," Marcus said, holding my face in his hands. "Not for what you can give me, for who you are." I felt something break open in my chest. For the first time in 2 years, I let myself believe him. Twist, Nuns 1, 8-12. The first 4 days were heaven. We walked on beaches. We made love in the afternoons with sunlight streaming through the windows. We talked about everything, our past, our dreams, our future. For 4 days, I felt like a human being again, instead of a broken machine that couldn't produce the one thing everyone expected from me. On the 5th day, Marcus's company called emergency. He had to drive back immediately, that same day. I was devastated, but I understood. Marcus had responsibilities. He kissed me goodbye at sunrise, and I watched him pack his bag, moving quickly because he was worried about the drive. I stayed behind. I needed a few more days to breathe, to remember who I was before the word infertile became my identity. That afternoon, I felt something. Nausea. Tenderness in my breasts. And my period. My period was a week late. My hands were shaking as I walked to the pharmacy near our hotel. I bought a test. I took it in that hotel bathroom with my heart pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. 2 pink lines. After 5 years of pain and Vanetta's cruelty and feeling like less than a woman, 2 pink lines. I screamed, actually screamed with joy, so loud that hotel staff came running to check if I was okay. I called Marcus immediately, but his phone went to voicemail. He was driving. He always turned his phone off when he drove. "Honey," I said into the phone, trying to keep my voice calm but shaking with excitement. "Call me as soon as you get this. I have something wonderful to tell you. I love you so much." I hung up. I put my hand on my stomach. "Hello, little one," I whispered. "I'm your mama. I can't wait to meet you." I spent the rest of that day in a daze. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I just sat on our balcony watching the ocean and imagining my future, our future. I imagined holding my baby. I imagined Marcus's face when I told him. I even imagined Vanetta's face. After all those years of cruel words, she would finally have to apologize. She would have to accept me. She would have to see me as worthy. But happy endings don't always come the way we plan them. At 3:47 p.m., my phone rang. It was a police officer. The words he spoke didn't make sense at first. Car accident, Highway 22, fatalities. I kept asking him to repeat himself. Surely he had the wrong number. The wrong person. But he had Marcus's license, Marcus's identification, Marcus's wallet. There was no mistake. Marcus Palmer was dead. Head-on collision with a semi-truck about 40 minutes from the city. died on impact. The officer was very sorry for my loss. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't process what I was hearing. This was Marcus they were talking about. Marcus who I'd kissed goodbye just hours ago. Marcus who was supposed to come home that night. Marcus who was going to be a father. Marcus who loved me. I booked a flight immediately, got on a plane at 8 p.m. that night, sat in my seat and stared at the back of the chair in front of me. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. My body was protecting me from a reality too terrible to accept. When I walked into the hospital identification room and saw Marcus's face pale and still and not Marcus anymore, something inside me shattered. Not metaphorically. I mean something actually broke inside my chest like glass. I fell to my knees. I screamed and screamed and screamed until hospital workers came running. They tried to help me up, but I couldn't move, couldn't do anything but scream. The sound coming out of me didn't even sound human. It sounded like an animal being ripped apart. They gave me medication to calm me down, put me in a hospital bed. That's when I remembered. The baby. Oh God, the baby. I'm pregnant, I told the nurse frantically. I just found out today. I'm pregnant. Please check my baby. Please. I need to know my baby is okay. A doctor came, did an ultrasound. I watched his face, trying to read what he was seeing. His expression was kind, but it was also sad. He was quiet for too long. Then he said the words that would haunt me for years. I'm very sorry, you've miscarried. The trauma from the shock of losing your husband, the stress, the adrenaline, it was too much for the pregnancy to survive. I'm very sorry. In one day, I lost everything. My husband, my baby, my future, all of it gone. They kept me in that hospital for 3 days. I didn't eat, didn't sleep, just lay in the bed and stared at the ceiling and felt absolutely nothing. My body had shut down as a protective measure, as a way to survive the unsurvivable. On the second day, Vanetta came to the hospital. I was lying in bed, still in shock, still unable to process any of it. She burst into my room like a hurricane. And instead of consoling me, instead of offering comfort to the woman who'd just lost her son and grandson in the same day, Vanetta started screaming at me. I'll never forget the things she said. You killed my son. If you hadn't insisted on going on that stupid vacation, if you'd just let him stay home, if you'd been a better wife, Harvey would still be alive. I lay in that hospital bed, unable to move while she stood over me and destroyed what was left of my soul. You're not even a real woman. You couldn't give him children. You couldn't keep him satisfied. You couldn't even keep him from trying to get away from you. And now he's dead because of you. I wanted to tell her that I had been pregnant, that I'd lost Marcus's baby, but the words wouldn't come. I was too broken to defend myself. You're no longer welcome in this family, Vanetta said, her voice cold as ice. You will never be forgiven. As far as I'm concerned, you killed my son, and I hope you rot in hell for it. Then she left. And I lay in that hospital bed and wished, truly wished, that I had died instead of Marcus. 2 years passed in fog. I moved through life like a ghost. I would wake up, go through the motions of being alive, then go back to sleep. There was no joy, no meaning, no reason to keep going, except that dying required effort I didn't have. I had a small apartment, the cheapest place I could find. I had some money from Marcus's life insurance, but not much. Vanetta had made sure to fight me for every penny, claiming I didn't deserve it because I'd killed her son. I had nothing and nobody. Then one day, something happened that changed everything. I was walking down the street, lost in my thoughts, not really paying attention to where I was going. A man was walking in front of me, and as he walked, his wallet fell out of his back pocket. I almost didn't notice, almost walked right past it. But something made me stop. Something made me pick it up. Something made me call out to him. Sir, you dropped this. The man turned around, surprised. I handed him the wallet. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Then something cracked in the man's face. His eyes filled with tears. Do you understand what you just did? He said, his voice shaking. Do you understand how rare that is? How rare it is for someone to be honest anymore? He told me the wallet contained not just his ID and credit cards, but also cash, a lot of cash, money he desperately needed for his business, money that would have been impossible to replace. He pulled out several bills and tried to hand them to me as a reward. I don't want your money, I said. It was the first time I'd spoken more than a few words to anyone in months. I was just returning what was yours. Please, the man insisted. Let me do this. Let me help you. You helped me when you had no reason to. Nobody does that anymore. Please let me be there for you the way you were there for me. Something in his words pierced through the fog that had surrounded me for so long. I took the money. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. Enough to change everything. I used that money to open a food stand. A small wooden stand on the side of the street where I sold fruits, vegetables, and simple prepared foods. I worked long hours, waking up before dawn, working until the sun went down. My food was good, my prices were fair. People started to know me, started to come to my stand regularly. I wasn't happy, not yet, but I was beginning to exist again, beginning to be part of the world. But there was a cost. There's always a cost when you try to rebuild a life that's been destroyed. People in the neighborhood knew my story. They knew I was the woman whose husband had died, the woman who'd failed to keep her family together, the woman who was now living alone, selling food on the street. Some people pitied me. Some gossiped about me. Some used my misfortune as entertainment. Did you hear about the street vendor? They'd say at parties. Her husband died and she went crazy. Now she just stands on the street selling fruit. They would laugh, shake their heads, feel grateful they weren't me. I heard the whispers, saw the way people looked at me when they thought I wasn't paying attention. But I pushed forward. I'd learned that the world doesn't care about your pain. You just have to keep going anyway. 3 years after Marcus died, I encountered the children who would change my life forever. I was walking home from my food stand one afternoon. It was the beginning of monsoon season, and the sky was dark and threatening rain. I was taking my usual route through the poor part of town, the part where people like me lived, people with nothing. That's when I saw them. 4 children huddled under a tree, trying to stay out of the rain. They looked about 10 or 11 years old, quadruplets, 3 boys and 1 girl. Identical faces, but I could already see their different personalities in the way they held themselves. They were thin, skeletal, really. Their clothes were torn and filthy. They were shivering. They looked like they hadn't eaten in days. I almost kept walking. I told myself it wasn't my business, wasn't my responsibility. I had my own struggles, my own pain. I didn't have room in my heart or my life for anyone else's suffering. That's what I told myself as I walked past them. I made it 15 steps before something stopped me. 15 steps away from those children. I felt something grab hold of my chest and squeeze. I remembered what it felt like to lose a baby, to be abandoned by family, to have the world turn its back on you when you needed help most. I thought about these 4 children, innocent children who had done nothing wrong, who were suffering through no fault of their own. I thought about what would happen to them if nobody helped. The cold nights coming, the hunger, the despair, the statistics about what happens to children living on the streets. I turned around. "Hey," I called out to them. "You 4, come here." The children looked at each other nervously. Trust is a luxury that poor children don't have. But the girl, the smallest one, slowly stood up. I could see it in her eyes. She was the brave one, the leader, the one with the spark still alive inside her. She walked toward me. The 3 boys followed reluctantly, hanging back, ready to run if this was a trap. "When was the last time you ate?" I asked. The children didn't answer. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. "I'm Keturah," I said. "I live nearby. I have food at my home. You can come if you want. Just for tonight. Just to get warm and get a meal." I said it simply, without judgment, without pity. Just as a statement of fact. Here is shelter. Here is food. Here is safety. The girl looked at her brothers. The oldest boy, the one with a small scar on his cheek, shook his head. He didn't trust me. But the girl grabbed both his hands and pulled him forward. "Come on," she said to him. "We don't have a choice. It's going to rain harder. We have to go somewhere." I led them to my home, a tiny, uncompleted building, an abandoned construction project that had never been finished. I'd claimed a corner of it and made it livable with plastic sheeting over the windows, a mattress, a small stove. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. It was warm. And for 4 homeless children, it was everything. I fed them that night. Rice and beans and vegetables. Simple food, but there was plenty of it. The children ate like they hadn't seen food in weeks. They probably hadn't. They ate until they were so full they could barely move. "What are your names?" I asked while they ate. The girl spoke first. "I'm Zephyr," she said. Her voice was stronger than I expected. "These are my brothers, Kofi, Jamir, and Amari." Kofi was the oldest, the one with the scar, who didn't trust easily. Jamir was the middle one. I could already see the intelligence burning in his eyes. Amari was the youngest of the boys, quiet, watchful, taking everything in. "How long have you been on the streets?" I asked. "Almost 2 years," Zephyr said. "Our parents died when we were 8. We had an aunt who was supposed to take care of us, but her voice trailed off. She didn't need to finish. I understood. The aunt had disappeared, abandoned them, left 4 children to fend for themselves. They had no one, no family, no home, no hope. As I listened to their story, my heart broke, because their story was my story. The story of being abandoned, the story of the world not caring, the story of having to survive on your own. When they finished eating, I made up spaces for them on the floor, gave them blankets, made sure they were warm, and as I watched them sleep, I made a decision that would change all of our lives forever. I would take care of them. Not for a night, not temporarily, permanently. I would become their mother. "Can we stay?" Zephyr asked the next morning. "Yes," Keturah said. "You can stay as long as you want." Keturah became a mother to 4 children who weren't hers biologically. She spent every penny from her food stand on them, fed them 3 meals a day, clothed them, sent them to school, paying for uniforms and books with money she didn't have. Some nights she went hungry so they could eat. The neighborhood gossip was merciless. That poor woman lost her mind when her husband died. Now she's collecting street children like strays. It's not natural, but Keturah didn't care. These children were her second chance. Years passed, the quadruplets grew. Zephyr was brilliant, wanted to be a doctor. Kofi was artistic, wanted to be an architect. Jamir was business-minded, wanted to build an empire. Amari was the quiet philosopher, wanted to teach. Keturah worked harder than humanly possible. 4 a.m. starts, 7 days a week. Her health deteriorated. Hair went gray. Joints ached. But she never slowed down. These children depended on her. When the quadruplets turned 15, something changed. They grew distant, cold, short answers, avoided eye contact, pulled away from her as if they were ashamed. Keturah tried not to let it hurt. It's normal teenage behavior, but the pain was there, a constant ache. One morning, Keturah woke up to find them gone. No note, no explanation, just gone. All 4 of them. She called their schools. Nothing. Checked the market. Nothing. The community center. Nothing. Vanished. She filed a missing persons report. The officer was dismissive. Teenagers run away all the time. They usually come back. But they didn't come back. Not after days. Not after weeks. Not after a month. Keturah was losing her mind. Not eating. Not sleeping. Walking the streets calling their names. During this nightmare, Keturah confided in her best friend, Lashonda Bowen. Lashonda had been there through everything. Harvey's death, the miscarriage, the early years with the food stand. She was a nurse who'd helped with the children. "Please don't tell anyone," Keturah begged. "I'm embarrassed. I feel like I failed them. I won't tell a soul, Lashonda promised. I swear on my children's lives. But Lashonda lied, spread it all over the neighborhood that the children ran away because Keturah was unstable, damaged, using them to fill a void, probably abusive. The news spread like wildfire. Women approached Keturah at the market. Oh honey, you must have done something terrible for them to run away like that. People crossed the street to avoid her. Vendors refused to sell to her. She became toxic, a cautionary tale. And Keturah had no idea her best friend was the source of all of it. What Keturah didn't know was even worse. Lashonda had convinced the children to leave, told them Keturah was a bad woman, that they'd be better off on their own, that Keturah was only using them for sympathy and attention. After 6 months of torture, Keturah left the neighborhood. She moved across the city where nobody knew her story, set up her food stand in a new location, kept her head down, didn't make friends. She lived like this for several years, alone, broken, haunted by children she'd loved who seemed to hate her. But here's where everything changes. While Keturah suffered alone, the quadruplets weren't staying on the streets. They had run away angry at poverty, angry at their situation, angry that their mother had to sacrifice so much. 2 weeks after leaving, they were found by a wealthy businessman named Demetrius Jacobs. Demetrius saw something in them, a spark, a hunger for more. Work for me, he said. Hard work. If you prove yourselves, I'll give you education, opportunities. I'll make sure you become something more than street children. They took the deal. For 5 years, they worked harder than they'd ever worked. Kofi worked in Demetrius's construction company, studying architecture at night. Zephyr shadowed scientists in Demetrius's pharmaceutical company, eventually going to medical school. Jamia learned business management, building Demetrius's education foundation. Amari taught street children while studying philosophy and education. By age 20, they'd transformed themselves. Kofi had his own architecture firm. Zephyr was a doctor at a prestigious hospital. Jahmia ran 3 educational facilities. Amari managed a non-profit serving thousands of children. They were rich, truly wealthy. But none of it meant anything. It was Amari who said it first. Lying in his expensive apartment one night, unable to sleep, drowning in emptiness. All his success meant nothing because the one person who mattered didn't know about it. His mother. He went to Kofi's apartment, woke him up. We need to find her. We need to find our mother and tell her we're sorry. Tell her she did right by us. Tell her everything we are is because of her. Kofi felt something crack open inside him. He'd been running from his emotions for years, but he couldn't run anymore. They called Zephyr and Jamia. All 4 had been feeling the same emptiness, the same void shaped like a woman named Keturah. They made a decision: find their mother, apologize, thank her, and take care of her the way she took care of them. They hired investigators, searched the city, looked everywhere. It took 6 months, but they found her. Still working, still running her food stand, still alone. She looked older, thinner, tired. The spark in her eyes was gone. The quadruplets made a plan. They couldn't just show up. They needed to do something that would show her sacrifices had meant something. They purchased a 5-star restaurant in the upscale part of the city. Kofi designed every detail. They hired staff, stocked it with the finest ingredients. It would be hers, a gift from her children. But first, they had to find her and tell her. One afternoon, Keturah was at her food stand, lost in thought. Then she heard a voice. "Mama, is that you?" Keturah's hands froze. Her body went still. She looked up. 4 people stood in front of her stand. People she didn't recognize at first. Then she did. Zephyr's eyes, Kofi's smile, Jamia's intensity, Amari's quiet presence. It was them, her babies. Except they weren't babies anymore. They were adults. Beautiful, successful, here. Keturah couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Zephyr reached out and touched her mother's hand. The touch was real. The warmth was real. Hope, pure, desperate, impossible hope flooded through Keturah. "I don't understand," Keturah whispered. "What are you doing here? Where have you been?" Kofi stepped forward. His voice was different now. Deeper, older, sadder, and wiser. "We left, Mama, and we were wrong. We thought we knew better. We were angry at the world and took it out on you. We didn't understand your sacrifice. We were selfish, stupid, and we're so sorry." Jamia spoke next. "We became successful, Mama. All of us. Everything you dreamed for us, and more. Kofi is an architect. Zephyr is a doctor. I run education programs. Amari manages a non-profit. We're rich. We're respected. We have everything." Amari finished quietly. "But none of it meant anything, because we didn't have you. And we realized our success. Everything we've achieved came from what you taught us. Kindness, resilience, sacrifice. You made us who we are." Keturah's legs gave out. Zephyr caught her mother and held her while Keturah fell apart. She cried harder than she'd cried since Marcus died. For years of suffering, for the pain of losing them, for the joy of having them back. "We bought you a restaurant," Zephyr said while her mother cried. "A real restaurant. 5-star. Beautiful. It's yours, Mama. We want you to never stand on the street again. We want you to rest. We want to take care of you now." Word spread through the neighborhood instantly. Keturah's children had come back in 4 Rolls-Royce vehicles. Wealthy, successful. The neighborhood that had judged her so harshly was now watching in shock. And Lashonda Bowen saw it too. Lashonda, who had betrayed Keturah's trust, who had spread lies, who had convinced the children to leave. She saw the luxury cars, the expensive clothes, the way they embraced their mother with love and gratitude. Lashonda felt the weight of her betrayal settle like a stone. Later that night, after the quadruplets took Keturah home and made sure she was comfortable, Keturah asked the question she'd been afraid to ask. "Why did you come back? Why did you forgive me?" "Forgive you?" Kofi looked confused. "Mama, we don't forgive you. We forgive ourselves for leaving, for being angry, for believing lies about you." "What lies?" Keturah asked, her voice breaking. That's when they told her. Lashonda had convinced them to leave, told them Keturah was unstable, using them, that they'd be better off without her. Lashonda had planted seeds of doubt that grew into resentment until they were willing to leave the one person who'd ever loved them unconditionally. Keturah felt the betrayal anew, almost worse the second time. But she also felt something else: understanding, compassion. Lashonda was broken, unhappy, jealous, small in her heart. Keturah could pity her even while being horrified by what she'd done. "Bring her to me," Keturah said to her children. When Lashonda came, terrified, expecting anger and revenge, Keturah looked at her former friend and said, "You did a terrible thing. You betrayed me. You hurt my children. You made me suffer. But I forgive you." Lashonda stared in shock. "I forgive you because I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to let bitterness consume me. I forgive you, Lashonda, but I can't be your friend anymore. There's too much broken between us, but I forgive you." Lashonda cried, because forgiveness without friendship is a kind of rejection, and she would have to live with knowing what she'd done and that she'd never have a chance to fix it. Keturah moved into the 5-star restaurant her children built for her. Everything was perfect. Head chef, full staff, but Keturah insisted on being involved, knowing her employees, making sure everyone was treated with respect and kindness. Within months, the restaurant became the most popular place in the city. Not just for the food, though the food was excellent, but for the energy, for the way Keturah treated everyone who walked through the door with genuine warmth. She remembered names, asked about families, cared, and people could feel that care. It was authentic, real. The story of Keturah Williams spread through the city and beyond. The street vendor who raised 4 homeless quadruplets, who sacrificed everything. who was abandoned and humiliated, then found again by her children, now wealthy and successful, who built her a restaurant as thanks. It was a story that made people believe in goodness again. Vanetta Palmer heard the story. She was in her 80s now, and when she heard about Ketura's success, about her beautiful children and thriving restaurant, something shifted inside her. She realized finally what she'd done, that her cruelty had been unwarranted, that she'd hurt Ketura for no reason other than bitterness. Vanetta came to the restaurant. She walked through the doors and asked to speak to Ketura. When Ketura saw Vanetta, old, small, broken, her first instinct was coldness. But then she saw how fragile Vanetta had become. "I'm sorry," Vanetta said. "I'm sorry for everything, for blaming you for Marcus's death, for the cruelty. I was bitter, and I took it out on you. You didn't deserve any of it. You were a good wife to my son, and a good mother to those children." Ketura looked at her former mother-in-law and saw not an enemy, but a woman who'd suffered too, who'd lost a son, who'd spent years carrying bitterness and regret. "I forgive you," Ketura said, and she meant it. Years passed. Ketura became a fixture in the community, known not just for her restaurant, but for her generosity. She donated to charities helping street children, started a foundation providing scholarships, hired people society had written off, people with criminal records, people struggling with addiction, and gave them jobs and training. Her children became successful beyond measure. Kofi designed the most beautiful buildings in the city. Zephyr became a leading medical researcher developing new treatments. Jamir's educational programs helped thousands escape poverty. Amari's non-profit changed countless lives. They attributed all their success to their mother. They spoke about her in interviews, credited her sacrifice, made sure everyone knew the woman behind their success was Ketura Williams, a woman who loved without condition and sacrificed without complaint. One day, years later, a young girl working at Ketura's restaurant approached her, a 16-year-old who'd been thrown out by her family, who'd come to work for Ketura with nowhere else to go. "Mrs. Williams, can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby, anything." "How did you do it? How did you keep going after everything? After your husband died, after you lost your children, after everyone judged you, how did you keep going?" Ketura thought about the question for a long time. "I kept going," Ketura said finally, "because I had a choice. Every single day, I had a choice. I could give up or keep going. I could let pain consume me or let it transform me. I could become bitter or become kind. Every morning, I chose to keep going. I chose to believe life had meaning, and eventually it did." The girl listened and nodded. "One more thing," Ketura said, taking the girl's hand. "Never underestimate the power of kindness. The kindness you show when you have nothing, that kindness comes back to you, not always how you expect, not always when you hope for, but it comes back, because kindness is a seed that grows into something beautiful." As the girl walked away, Ketura looked around her restaurant. She looked at the beautiful space her children gave her, at the employees, many of them people with nowhere else to go, at the customers eating and laughing and celebrating life. And she felt grateful. Grateful for everything, even the pain, even the loss, because without those experiences, she would never have become the woman she was. And this woman who had survived heartbreak and betrayal and public humiliation was someone worth becoming. On Ketura's 70th birthday, thousands gathered in the park where she'd first seen the quadruplets. People she'd fed, people she'd employed, people she'd helped, people changed by her story. They came with flowers and gifts and gratitude and love. As Ketura sat surrounded by her family and community, she felt something she never expected. Not because life went according to plan, but because she'd taken her pain and transformed it into purpose. Because she'd loved, and that love came back 1,000-fold. Her quadruplets stood beside her. Kofi said, "You taught us family isn't defined by blood. Family is defined by sacrifice, by love. You chose us. That makes you more of a mother than anyone could ever be." Zephyr added, You taught us success doesn't matter without people to share it with. We achieved everything we dreamed of, but it meant nothing until we could share it with you. Jamir said, You taught us that wealth without purpose is empty. Everything we've built traces back to you. Amari, the quiet one, simply said, You taught us that one person's kindness can change the world. Every person we've helped, everything we've accomplished, it all traces back to you. Keturah embraced her children. And in that moment she understood that her life hadn't been a tragedy even though it contained tragedy. Her life had been a transformation, a journey from darkness to light. She looked at all the people gathered to celebrate her, and she saw proof that goodness matters, that kindness leaves a mark, that love, real love, the kind that doesn't demand anything in return, is the most powerful force in the world. Keturah Williams had started with nothing, but in the end, she had everything that mattered: family, purpose, meaning, love, and the knowledge that her life, her choices, her kindness had made the world better. That is the true ending. Not in the luxury cars or five-star restaurant or financial success. The true ending is in the eyes of every person whose life she touched, in the children she raised, in the legacy she left behind. The true ending is in understanding that one person determined to be kind despite their pain can change everything. Now I want to ask you something. What would you have done in Keturah's situation? If your spouse died, if you lost your children, if everyone turned their backs on you, would you have given up, become bitter, or would you have found the strength to keep going? Would you have chosen kindness when the world showed you cruelty? Think about that. Sit with that question. And when you have your answer, do this for me. Subscribe to Tales After Dark. Turn on that notification bell. We have over 100 stories waiting for you. Stories of triumph, heartbreak, transformation. Thank you for listening. Thank you for staying with Keturah's story from beginning to end. Keturah Williams' story is over, but your story is just beginning.